There are nights in history when the world did not move forward, nights when time held its breath, nights when even war, with all its noise and fury, seemed to grow silent. This is one such night, a night from the Western Front of 1916, a place where the earth itself had been torn open by shells, where millions of footsteps had turned soft soil into mud, thick as grief, and where men learned to sleep beside their own shadows, never knowing if morning would come. Picture it, long, winding trenches stretching across France like scars carved into the skin of the world, walls of mud reinforced with rotting sandbags, water filling every footprint, rifles stacked against wooden braces, boots heavy with dirt. Breath visible in the frozen night air. Above it all, the sky glows faintly with the last embers of artillery fire far in the distance, a dull orange shimmer on a horizon that no longer remembers sunrise. Inside the trench, everything is quiet now, unnaturally quiet. Men who have not slept properly in weeks sit shoulder to shoulder, their backs pressed against cold earth, their hands wrapped around tin mugs of lukewarm tea. They speak in whispers, if they speak at all. Some write letters they may never send. Some stare at photographs worn thin from being held every night. Some simply close their eyes and listen to the wind moving through twisted barbed wire above their heads. Lonely song as old as sorrow. And then there are the sounds. Underneath, the wooden planks shifting, the distant thud of a shovel through buried clay, the faint creak of a soldier adjusting his pack. Tiny sounds in a massive, shattered world. But there is something else tonight, something different, a stillness that feels alive, a silence thick enough to touch. For the first time in days, the artillery has stopped. No shells. No machine guns. No flares lighting up the night. Only a low mist settling across the no man's land. The barren stretch between opposing trenches, filled with wire, crater holes, and memories of men who never returned. The soldiers feel it immediately. A kind of waiting. A kind of listening. Some call it the calm before dawn. Others call it a miracle. A few are too tired to call it anything at all. Yet in this quiet, something impossible begins to happen. Voices carry more clearly. Footsteps echo more deeply. Breaths feel heavier. The cold seems sharper, as if the air itself is watching. And far across the darkness, through mist thick as grief, a faint glow appears in the enemy trench. A lantern, barely visible. It does not move. It does not shake. It simply flickers, as though someone on the other side is also awake, also listening to the silence, also wondering why this night feels different from every night before. Trench nights were usually filled with fear. The whistle of incoming shells, the scream of mud exploding in the dark, the sudden bursts of rifle fire, the terrible knowledge that death could come from anywhere. But not tonight. Tonight, the war itself seems to have paused to take a breath. As if the earth is too exhausted to carry the weight of conflict. As if the sky refuses to echo any more violence. In this rare stillness, a soldier closes his eyes and listens to the wind play through broken helmets scattered in no man's land. Another adjusts the worn wool blanket around his shoulders, feeling the weight of days without sleep fade slowly. Another lets his hand rest on the edge of the trench, feeling the cold mud pulse with the heartbeat of distant footsteps moving quietly through the night. No one speaks of ghosts in the trenches, but everyone knows they are there. Men gone too soon. Men lost in the fog. Men whose stories were swallowed by the earth before they could be told. Tonight, their presence feels closer, not haunting. Not frightening, just present. As if they have come to listen to the silence. The war will continue in the morning. Soldiers know this better than anyone. The guns will roar again. The sky will tear open. The trenches will fill with smoke and screams. But not now, right now, in this small fragile moment carved out of the chaos of history. The Western Front is still, a night suspended in time, a night untouched by violence, a night where soldiers breathe in peace, even if only for a few hours, a night the world forgot, but the trenches remembered forever. Close your eyes, hear the wind moving through the barbed Where hear the distant lantern burning, faintly, hear the quiet breaths of men who have carried too much for too long. Tonight, you will walk with them, through mud, through silence, through memories that still echo a century later. This is the silent night of the Western Front. The Western Front had many kinds of nights. Nights of fire, nights of screams, nights when the sky rained steel. But this night was different. It carried a silence so heavy, so unnatural, that even the mud seemed to breathe slower. In the fall of 1916, a longer sector west of the sun had slipped behind the ragged horizon hours earlier. The air was damp with a cold that clung to bone. Rows of sandbags bulged like swollen scars along the trench walls, each one soaked with weeks of rain. Pools of muddy water rippled with every footstep, reflecting the faint glow of distant lanterns. The smell of smoke, cordite, wet wool, and rot blended into a permanent haze. Private James Clark, 23 years old, wrapped his fingers tighter around his dented tin mug. The tea inside was lukewarm, but it was enough to steady the slight tremor in his hands. His uniform was stiff with dried mud, his boots squelched with every shift of weight. His breath formed pale clouds as it drifted into the dark. He had survived shell fire at Luce. He had crawled through the mud of Beaumont Hamel. He had watched men fall beside him so suddenly it felt as if the world simply erased them. And yet, despite everything, he had never heard a night like this. No artillery. No rifle cracks. No screams. Just nothing. Strange, isn't it? Murmured Sergeant Wilkes beside him. The older man had lines carved deep into his face, the kind that wore ages into people long before their time. Clark nodded. Feels like the whole front's holding its breath. A thin mist rolled in across no man's land, thickening around the jagged silhouettes of shattered trees. The barbed wire glistened like strands of broken silver. Crater holes filled with stagnant water lay scattered across the open ground. Somewhere in that darkness were bodies left where they fell too dangerous to retrieve. The silence was not comforting. It was expectant. As if the earth waited for something. Across the battlefield, over half a kilometer away, another soldier felt it too. Corporal Arto Müller of the German Imperial Army crouched in his own trench, the cold eating through his tunic. His breath came out in tight white plumes. His hands, covered in mud and dried blood, tightened around a soggy piece of bread. He leaned against a wooden support beam and listened. No whistles. No mortar. No British shells ripping the air. Just an unnatural quiet. He looked toward the British lines and saw something unusual. A dim lantern flickering faintly. It did not move. It did not sway. It simply burned. Back in the British trench, Clark saw the same thing. Why would they keep a lantern lit? He whispered. Maybe something's wrong on their side. Wilkes replied. Or maybe something's wrong on ours. Further down the line, soldiers whispered stories of strange sounds, metal tapping beneath the planks, distant boots crunching gravel where no patrol should be, soft humming traveling through the frozen air. No one spoke loudly. Loud voices felt disrespectful somehow, as though shouting might wake something ancient slumbering beneath the mud. Clark closed his eyes for a moment. His mother's letter from last week still lay folded in his breast pocket. She wrote about the broken fence, the neighbor's new baby, the pumpkins in the garden, ordinary life. A world that felt impossibly far away from the stench, fear, and freezing dampness around him. He imagined her sitting by the fireplace, the flames dancing across the room, the tick of the clock echoing against the walls. He wondered if she still prayed for him every night. A soft rustle pulled him back. A young replacement soldier, barely 18, slid down beside him. His face was pale with exhaustion. "Clark," he whispered. "Listen." Clark strained his ears. He heard it. A faint sound carried on the wind. Something fragile. Something human. Not English. Not recognizable at first. Then he knew. It was humming. A melody. Soft, steady, mournful. Coming from the German trench. Wilkes frowned. "They're singing." Clark shook his head. "One man, maybe two. Sounds like an old folk song." Across the lines, Muller heard the same. A British soldier farther down the trench was gently tapping the butt of his rifle, creating a rhythm. Another hummed back, the sound hesitant, but real. Music. In a place where music had no reason to exist, the mist rolled thicker, settling over the battlefield like a blanket drawn over a restless child. The men on both sides breathed slower, their shoulders slumped. The constant twitch, the instinctive flinch from sudden explosions, faded. For the first time in weeks, some even closed their eyes. Clark leaned back against the trench wall. The mud was cold, but he didn't care. His body felt heavier than his own thoughts. He looked up. The sky, for once, was clear enough to see a few stars. Their faint glow shimmered through the drifting fog, making the world look softer, older, almost sacred. Muller, too, looked upward. He saw the same stars. The same fog. The same impossible calm. A strange sharing of a moment between enemies who had never seen each other's faces. Clark spoke first. "Feels like the war's tired," Wilkes answered. "We all are." A distant rumble echoed suddenly, and every soldier tensed. Hands gripped rifles, hearts hammered, but the sound faded into nothing. No attack. No artillery. Just a shifting groan of ice forming on the edge of a crater. The young replacement exhaled shakily. "I don't like it," he whispered, to quiet, but Clark did like it. For the first time since crossing the channel, he felt the possibility, not of hope, but of rest. Another faint melody drifted over the battlefield. This time, several voices hummed in harmony, not joyous, not loud, just tired men singing into the cold night. Wilkes murmured, "You know, Clark, if the war ever ends, nights like this might be the ones people remember. Not the noise, not the fire, but the silence." Clark nodded slowly. This silence was not peace, but it was the closest thing they had. He pulled his blanket around his shoulders and let the stillness seep into him. The wind moved across the barbed wire. With a soft sigh. The lantern across the field flickered. The stars held their faint glow. The trenches breathed in unison. And the Western Front, for one fragile night, rested. The silence held through the night like a fragile thread, stretched thin, trembling, yet refusing to break. Along the Western Front, where noise had become the language of survival, this quiet felt unreal, almost unwelcome. But four men who had lived months beside death, a moment of stillness carried the weight of a miracle. Private James Clark woke from a brief half-sleep when a cold drop of water slid down the back of his neck. He shivered and sat up straighter, pulling his damp blanket around his shoulders. The wooden plank he sat on groaned under his weight. The trench floor glistened with water that never fully drained, pooling between the narrow boards. A faint glow from a single oil lamp revealed the shapes of men sleeping upright, heads resting against their rifles or slumped against sandbags. Their faces, drawn and pale, looked softer in the flickering light. Without gunfire cracking through the night, they resembled ordinary boys, not soldiers trapped in a nightmare made of mud and metal. Clark rubbed his eyes and listened. Still nothing. Not a shell, not a whistle, not a sudden blast of machine gun fire, not even the deep rumble of distant artillery. This silence was rare, more than rare, dangerous. "Sergeant." Wilkes shifted beside him and muttered, "How long's it been quiet now?" Clark checked the pocket watch he always kept tied by a string, a gift from his father. "Nearly 4 hours. 4 hours." Wilkes exhaled. "The last time we went 4 hours without shelling, it was because both sides were rebuilding before another storm." Clark didn't respond. He didn't want to imagine what kind of storm would replace this calm. Down the trench, a younger soldier spoke through the dark. "Do you think they're planning an attack?" Someone answered, "If they were planning one, we'd hear movement. We'd hear something." But there was nothing to hear. Only the slow drip of water. The soft creak of wooden beams. The distant hum of men breathing in their sleep. Across the battlefield, miles of trenches mirrored the British silence. Corporal Arthur Muller sat alone at the lip of the German trench, elbows resting on his knees. He held a letter in his hands, one he had read so many times the edges had curled and browned. His wife had written it from Hamburg, telling him about the bakery she passed each morning, how the river froze early that winter, how their toddler had learned a new word. Home, a world untouched by no man's land. Muller closed his eyes and imagined the sound of church bells, the smell of warm bread, the familiar rhythm of footsteps on cobblestone streets. Then he opened them again and faced the broken earth, the crater holes filled with icy water, the twisted wire rising like cruel black vines from the mud. He wondered if Clark, the British soldier he would never meet, pictured home in the same quiet moments. Perhaps every soldier did. Muller lifted his chin as a faint tune drifted across the night. A whistle, soft and slow, not a military signal, just a melody a soldier hummed to keep the cold from swallowing him whole. The sound floated over the fog, hung gently in the air, then faded. Then another voice, British this time, hummed a second melody. The two tunes were different, mismatched, but somehow they blended into a strange harmony. Rising above crater holes and barbed wire, Muller whispered, "Even music finds a way through war." Back in the British trench, Clark stiffened when he heard footsteps approaching, but it was only Lieutenant Harding, lantern in hand, checking on the men. Harding's boots splashed softly as he walked, everyone alert but resting. "If the Germans attack, we'll hear them long before we see them," Clark nodded. "Sir, do you think this quiet means something?" Harding paused, considering. Every quiet night in this war means something. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Let's hope this is the good kind. He moved on, the lantern light fading behind him. Clark leaned his head back against the mud wall and closed his eyes again. He remembered how loud the Western Front usually was, the shriek of artillery shells ripping through the sky like metal tearing cloth, the thunder that followed as they exploded against the earth. He remembered the way the air would shake, the way the ground felt alive with violence. He remembered nights when the horizon glowed red with fire, and the sky was torn apart by flares. But tonight, nothing. It felt like the front had drowned under its own exhaustion. The mist thickened again, rolling low to the ground. It clung to the men's boots, crept up their sleeves, wrapped itself around the wooden planks of the trench. Clark opened his eyes and found the world turned ghostly white. He could barely see the man, sitting only a few feet away. He cleared his throat. "Wilkes, you awake?" "Eh?" Wilkes replied softly. "Feels like the dead are walking tonight." Clark forced a smile. "As long as they don't start talking." But Wilkes didn't smile back. "I've seen things in this fog," he whispered. "Shapes moving between the craters. Footsteps where no patrol walks. Men who look like they're there. Until you blink." Clark swallowed. "You're tired." "We all are," Wilkes murmured. Across the battlefield, Muller also watched the mist with growing unease. Shadows danced inside it. Shapes formed and dissolved. The fog bent around silent barbed wire like a living creature searching for a place to settle. Muller whispered, "This fog, it remembers everything." He had heard old stories. Soldiers buried alive by collapsed trenches. Men lost in night raids. Bodies swallowed by mud. The Western Front was a graveyard without markers, and the fog was the only witness that moved freely through its broken corridors. Clark wrapped his blanket tighter and stared at the faint lantern across the battlefield. It still glowed, a tiny flicker in the vast dark. He whispered, "Why hasn't it gone out?" Wilkes answered, "Maybe someone over there is awake too. Maybe they're watching the same fog." Clark exhaled slowly. "Feels like they're closer tonight." The silence deepened, thick, solemn, endless. Somewhere in the distance, a lone crow cawed once, then vanished into the night. Muller looked at the lantern in the British trench and wondered if its keeper was thinking of him too. The strange harmony between two worlds at war. And as the fog folded itself around the battlefield, both men, strangers, enemies, brothers in exhaustion, listened to the same silence and wondered what the morning would bring. But deep beneath the ground, under layers of mud and broken wood, something else stirred. A vibration. Soft at first, barely noticeable. Then another. Clark felt it through the plank under him. Muller felt it through the soreness of his boots. Not artillery. Not footsteps. Not Wind, a sound like the earth, shifting in its sleep. Wilkes whispered. Did you feel that? Clark nodded slowly, heart tightening. The silent night was not empty. Something was coming. The vibration grew again, soft, slow, almost patient, too gentle to be artillery, too steady to be footsteps, too deep to be anything ordinary. It felt like a breath rising from the belly of the earth itself. Private Clark pressed his palm against the wooden plank beneath him, and the tremor fluttered faintly through his skin like the heartbeat of something buried. Clark whispered, Wilkes, that wasn't the wind. Wilkes nodded stiffly. The ground doesn't move like that unless something shifts underground. Could be a tunnel collapse. Or worse. A few soldiers farther down the trench stirred uneasily. One sat up abruptly, clutching his rifle. Another rubbed his eyes, confused at being woken by something that did not sound like war. Far across the fog-soaked wasteland, Corporal Arto Muller in the German trench felt the same tremor. He crouched, pressing his fingertips into the mud. The cold earth vibrated again, just enough to be felt, not heard. He frowned deeply. Not shelling, he murmured. Not mining blasts. He knew the British sometimes dug tunnels beneath enemy lines. The Germans did too. Underground warfare, silent, deadly, suffocating, was common. But those tunnels always carried the sound of tools, muffled strikes, the faint clang of metal. This vibration was different. It felt natural. It felt alive. Muller stood, scanning the trench. Anyone here digging? A soldier shook his head. No picks, no shovels, nothing. The fog thickened, swallowing sound before it traveled. No man's land pulsed like a giant lung. Back in the British trench, Lieutenant Harding walked briskly toward Clark's position. His lantern swayed, casting long shadows against the mud walls. You men felt it? He asked. Clark nodded. Yes, sir. Twice now. Harding crouched, touched the ground. Could be distant bombardments echoing through the subterranean trenches. The French lines are shelling farther south tonight. Wilkes frowned. Sir, when the French shell, we hear the air. This is coming from below. Harding hesitated. The brief silence betrayed him. He felt it too, and it unsettled him. But an officer could not show fear. Not show fear. We stay alert, he said finally. That's all. He moved on, lantern flickering behind him. Clark leaned closer to Wilkes. What if something collapsed underground? Wilkes exhaled slowly. With the size of the tunnels dug under these fields, anything's possible. A chamber giving way, a shaft coming down, could shake the ground 4 miles. Clark shuddered. The western front was a strange world. Mud above, mud below. Men pressed between like worms in a broken garden. He reached for his rifle, holding it not out of fear of Germans, but fear of the unknown. Around him, soldiers stirred, adjusting blankets, glancing nervously at the fog. The silence had carried comfort before. Now it carried dread. Meanwhile, in the German trench, Muller signaled to a young soldier named Rainer. You felt that? Muller asked. Rainer nodded. Twice, it felt like someone walking under the ground. Muller stiffened. Men don't walk beneath the earth here. They dig. And digging has sound. Rainer swallowed. Then what is it? Muller didn't answer. Instead, his gaze drifted toward a faint glow in the British trench. The lantern that hadn't gone out all night, still burning, still steady. As he watched, the flame flickered violently, though no wind blew. A second later, the vibration returned slightly stronger. Clark felt it too. His tin mug rattled against the plank. The men froze, listening. The tremor lasted a full 3 seconds. Then, silence. A soldier whispered, Is something coming up? No one comes up from there. Wilkes muttered, Only down. Clark rubbed his hands together for warmth. The fog curled around his fingers like cold breath. The night deepened, heavy as wet wool. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he froze. A shape stood in no -man single quotes s-land. Not clear. Not moving. Just there. Clark blinked hard, looked again. The shape resembled a soldier standing upright, half covered in fog. The outline was faint, but unmistakable. Helmet, shoulders, a rifle slung across the back. Wilkes followed Clark's gaze. His breath caught. Is that one of ours? Clark whispered, "Or one of theirs." The figure did not move, did not sway, did not vanish. It simply remained frozen in fog, carved out of silence. Muller saw it from the German side. His heart jolted. Someone out there. Reiner narrowed his eyes. Who stands still in the open like that? Anyone would be shot. But no shot rang out. Clark raised his voice slightly. "Oi, you there. Move so we can see you." Nothing. The figure remained still. Wilkes hissed, "Don't shout. It could be a German trick." Clark frowned. "Why put a soldier in plain view?" Wilkes exhaled. "To make us reveal positions." Clark shook his head. "He isn't holding a weapon at the ready. Look, it's loose by his side." The fog curled thicker around the shape. The figure's edges blurred. Then the ground trembled again, worse this time, like a deep groan. The lantern in the brushish trench flickered violently. The figure in the fog swayed once, unnaturally. And then without sound it collapsed straight down. Not backward, not to the side. Straight down, as though the earth swallowed it whole. Clark gasped. He fell straight into the ground. Muller from the opposite trench leaned forward, horrified. "No man falls like that. Not naturally." Wilkes clutched the trench edge. "Is it the tunnels collapsing? Craters shifting?" Clark shook his head. That wasn't a collapse. The fog didn't even scatter. The tremor faded. Silence returned. Heavy. Unbreathing. Terrifying. Reiner whispered from the German side. "Sir, is this land cursed?" Muller didn't answer. He could not. Clark wiped sweat from his brow despite the cold. "There was someone there, Wilkes. I saw him, standing, staring." Wilkes swallowed. "Some things in this place, they don't stay buried. Not in this soil." Clark stared at the crater where the figure had stood. The fog thinned for a moment. The ground was completely undisturbed. No hole. No collapse. No footprints. Nothing. Clark, single quotes, S voice trembled. "Where did he go?" Wilkes whispered. "Where everyone goes on this front. Into the mud." Clark shuddered, because deep inside he felt something else. That soldier had not fallen. He had been taken across the field. Muller whispered the same thought. And as the night deepened, the tremor returned stronger, closer, steady as a heartbeat rising from beneath the dead earth. Something below was waking. The tremor rolled through the ground again. Longer this time, long enough that every wooden plank, every rifle butt, every metal cup in the trench rattled softly in the dark. Men woke one by one, blinking into the fog with hollow eyes. Not from fear of gunfire this time, but from fear of what wasn't happening. Private Clark pressed his boots deeper into the mud, steadying himself. His breath came out slow and shaky. He tried to convince himself that the vibration was just distant tunnel work, a collapse somewhere far beneath the ground. But the tremor didn't feel mechanical. It felt rhythmic, alive. Sergeant Wilkes leaned against the trench wall and whispered, "This land's shifting, boy. The whole front's been dug and re-drilled so much it's hollow beneath us." Clark shook his head. "If it was a collapse, we'd hear wood snapping, stones cracking. But this, it's like something moving." Before Wilkes could reply, a muffled thump echoed from deep underground, followed by another, slow, spaced apart, as if someone was striking the earth from below. One soldier muttered, "That's Pix. Has to be." Another whispered, "Not at this hour. No miners dig this late." Clark swallowed hard, his throat dry. The fog curled tightly around the planks, as though listening. Far across no man's land, in the German trench, Muller crouched again. "Reiner, listen." Reiner pressed his ear to the mud. His eyes widened. "That's not digging. There's no scrape, no tall clink. It's like thudding." Muller nodded slowly, as if something is pushing upward. Reiner's voice trembled. "Sir, men don't push soil upward from that deep. They'd suffocate." Muller didn't answer. His pulse hammered in his temple. Back in the brushish line, the younger soldiers clutched their rifles, but none dared stand upright. The night was too quiet. Any movement felt dangerous, like stirring a sleeping creature. Clark's eyes drifted again toward the spot in the fog, where the soldier-shaped figure had stood earlier. The mist was thick there, swirling in a strange circle, as if drawn by an invisible current. Wilkes whispered, "You saw it drop straight down. Just like the others. Clark frowned. What others? Wilkes hesitated. His breath wavered. In July, before you were transferred here, a patrol disappeared in that same patch. No shots fired. No bodies found. The ground was undisturbed. They just vanished. Clark's stomach tightened. Why didn't anyone tell us? Because, Wilkes said, men panic enough in daylight. Another tremor rolled through the planks, stronger, faster, rattling loose dirt from the timber beams. A tin mug toppled over, splashing cold tea onto Clark's sleeve. And then it stopped. The ground fell silent again. Not calm, not peaceful, silent like a held breath. A faint whistle rose from the German side, an old folk melody. A soldier trying to calm himself. The sound drifted over the fog like a lost echo. Clark listened, then froze, because beneath the melody, something else breathed. A low, heavy exhalation rising from the soil. The trench planks creaked softly in response. Wilkes grabbed Clark's arm, moved back from the wall. Clark stumbled away as the earth beneath the nearest support beam gave a soft groan, as if bowing inward. And then, slowly, impossibly, the mud between the planks began to lift, not break, not crack. Lift. A bulge formed under the boards. Clark stepped back quickly, boots sinking deeper in mud. Sir, a soldier whispered hoarsely, something's under us. A dozen men scrambled to their feet. The bulge grew, raising the plank nearly an inch. The wood bent upward, like something pressing from below. Clark felt his pulse hammer in his ears. Is that gas pressure? Wilkes shook his head rapidly. Gas doesn't move wood like fingers pushing upward. Another tremor shook the ground. The plank rose another inch. Then it stopped. Every man held his breath. The fog drifted lazily. Unaware of the panic blooming in the trench, the lanterns flickered weakly, casting shifting shadows across the walls as soldiers huddled together. Far across the field, Muller and Reiner saw another strange sight. A figure stood in their own trenches, far end half hidden by fog, facing the wall. Who goes there? Muller called softly. The figure didn't move. Muller approached with cautious steps. Soul. Still nothing. He edged closer. The figure wore a German uniform, filthy, soaked, clinging to gaunt shoulders. But something was wrong, very wrong. The soldier didn't respond, didn't turn, didn't breathe. Muller's torchlight flickered. And he saw it. The man's boots weren't touching the ground. He hovered an inch above the mud, suspended, stiff, motionless. Muller stumbled backward, heart seizing in his chest. Reiner, get back. But before Reiner could move, the figure slowly began to sink. Downward. Straight down. The mud rippled like water as the soldier's boots dipped beneath the surface without breaking it. The fog curled tighter around him, wrapping his form like a shroud. Within seconds, he was gone. Reiner choked out. Sir. He went through the mud like it was open air. Muller's skin crawled. This land, it's swallowing the dead. Across the field, Clark felt a strange pulling sensation in the air, a whisper of cold wind rushing downward, as if the earth itself inhaled. The bulge under the British plank relaxed. The wood sank back into place. Wilkes exhaled sharply. It's moved away. Clark stared at the ground. Moved. Tunnels don't move. Wilkes looked him dead in the eye. Then something down there can. Clark felt sweat bead down his neck, despite the cold. The fog thickened further, swirling like ghostly fringe. The lantern across no man's land flickered once, then twice, then it went out. Clark's heart dropped. Wilkes whispered, whatever was under us, it's heading toward them. Muller, still breathless, watched as a ripple moved through the fog near the German trench floor like a shadow darting beneath fabric. The planks trembled, mud shifted, the air tightened. Reiner whispered, we need to get out. Now. But there was no safe place to run. No shelter deeper than the trench. No solid ground untouched by tunnels, mud, and memory. Clark gripped the trench wall, whispering, this night isn't natural. Something's wrong with the ground. Wilkes nodded. Something's wrong with the dead. The fog pulsed once, twice as if responding. And then, from deep beneath the soil, somewhere far below the planks and roots and buried men, a sound rose. A voice, faint, muffled, impossible, a human voice crying out from under the ground. Help. Followed by another, please. Then a third, broken, terrified. Get back. Clark stumbled backward in horror. Men around him froze. Wilkes whispered hoarsely, those aren't miners. And across the battlefield, Muller whispered the same words. Those are the missing. The ground vibrated again, harder, closer, hungrier, and the fog trembled with it. The voice rose only for a moment, yet it lingered in the cold air long after the tremor faded. Private Clark stood frozen, his fingers digging into the edge of the trench wall. Every man around him stared downward, as though the earth itself had spoken. And in a way, it had. Help. Please. Get back. 3 voices, muffled, distant, but unmistakably human. Clark's pulse hammered. These weren't imagined sounds. Soldiers on both sides of the front had learned to separate hallucinations from reality. The trenches hardened the senses. This was real. Wilkes whispered, no echo. Too low for that. Clark nodded shakily. Sir. That came from beneath us. Double quotes far across no man's land. Muller and Reiner were equally pale. The German corporal clenched his jaw to steady himself. Did you hear words? Reiner swallowed, clearer than anything in the fog. A soldier near them muttered a prayer in German. Crossing himself despite the freezing mud dripping from his gloves, Muller put a hand on Reiner's shoulder. We stay sharp. If it's a tunnel collapse, men may be trapped. But if it's something else, he didn't finish, because even saying the thought aloud felt dangerous. Back in the British trench, the men huddled to one side, their boots sinking deeper into mud that no longer felt like simple earth. Clark bent down and lifted a wooden plank gently. No cracks, no fresh soil, no churning. Nothing. As though the voice had never echoed at all. But the fog felt thicker now, pressing downward upon the trench like a weight. Lieutenant Harding returned quickly, lantern shaking in his hand. What happened? Men are saying they heard something. Wilkes pointed to the floor. Under us. A voice. Harding stiffened. Anyone injured? Any structural collapse? No collapse, sir, Clark said. The ground moved, like something traveling underneath. Harding knelt, placing his ear to the planks. The silence pressed in around him. He waited for a tremor, a voice. Anything. Nothing came. He stood. Might be trapped miners. The French have shafts all through this area. Wilkes' voice lowered. Sir, trapped miners don't move from trench to trench, and they don't pull men downward without sound. The lieutenant didn't respond. He simply walked away, lantern bobbing, silence following after him. Clark exhaled shakily. He looked across no man's land again. The lantern that once flickered in the German trench earlier was now dark. No glow, no shape, just an ink-black stretch of fog swallowing the distant ground. Wilkes whispered. The figure that sank earlier, it vanished exactly where that lantern sits. Clark nodded. And what if? Wilkes added quietly. The ground is taking the fallen back. Clark tried to stop his mind from spiraling. He reminded himself of the front's logic, of mines, of tunnels, of soil weakened by 1,000 explosions. War distorted land. Nothing behaved naturally. But the voices. He had no explanation for that. The mist curled over the trenches, lowering visibility even further. It pressed against Clark's cheeks like cold hands. It wrapped around rifles leaning on the wall. It poured in the corners of dugouts, like ink spilled across parchment. In the German trench, Muller lifted a lantern, squinting into the distance. The fog's glow made everything appear ghost-like. Even the living soldiers standing next to him seemed half dissolved. Reiner whispered, Sir, what if the British heard the same? I'm certain they did, Muller replied. But they'll think it's us. And we'll think it's them, Muller said softly. That's how fear works. Reiner's gaze shifted toward the ground. Sir, that soldier we saw sink earlier, do you think he was alive? Muller shook his head slowly. No living man falls without sound. Clark was thinking the same thing across the field. He turned to Wilkes. What if the voices aren't the living? Wilkes stiffened. Watch your tongue, boy. Soldiers crack faster than rifles in this place. Clark lowered his eyes, but deep down, he knew something was wrong with this land. Something older than the war, older than the trenches, older than men could understand. Another tremor shivered beneath their boots. Clark held the plank again. The vibration was different now, quicker, more urgent, as if the earth was crawling. A soldier whispered, "It's moving fast." Clark felt it too. The tremor traveled horizontally, sliding under the trench floor like water beneath ice. It moved from one end of the trench to the other in a matter of seconds. The planks rattled softly, then it stopped. But not before every lantern in the British trench flickered violently. Across the field, every German lantern flickered to the same moment, the same second, the same silent breath. Then darkness. The lanterns went out. The fog swallowed the trenches whole. Clark froze. He couldn't even see his own hand in front of him. The darkness was absolute, men whispered. Some cried out softly. Others clung to their rifles, like they were the last real thing in the world. Wilkes' voice came through the black. "Light. Someone get a match." A soldier fumbled for a matchbox. His fingers shook so badly, he dropped it into the mud. Another found a spare, struck it. The match flared. For one split second, Clark saw something. A face. Not Wilkes. Not Harding. Not any man he recognized. A pale, mud-coated face inches from his own. Eyes hollow, dark, empty, as though staring from beneath the earth. Clark gasped and stumbled backward. The match fell. Darkness swallowed everything again. "Clark!" Wilkes barked. "I saw." Clark's voice cracked. "Someone. Right here. Face to face." Wilkes gripped his sleeve. "A soldier." "No," Clark whispered. "Not living." Before Wilkes could answer, a sound rose behind them. A dragging. Soft. Steady. Something moving through the mud. A soldier whispered, shaken. "Someone's walking in the trench." The dragging grew louder. Closer. As though a man was pulling himself along the wall. Wilkes shouted, "Who's there? Identify yourself." No reply. But the dragging continued. Clark reached out blindly. His hand brushed something cold, damp, rubbery. He yanked it back. "Sir," Clark whispered. "Someone's hand, someone cold." The dragging paused. Then a voice spoke. Soft. Broken. A whisper rising from inches away. "Don't go down." Clark's spine turned to ice. Wilkes grabbed his arm. "Who said that? Who's there?" No answer. Harding's lantern finally flared back to life as someone managed to relight it. The trench illuminated. Empty. Only soldiers staring wide. Eyed. Clark turned slowly. No one stood near him. No mud-streaked figure. No body. Nothing. Wilkes inhaled sharply. "Clark, what exactly did you see?" Clark swallowed. A face, dead, mud covering everything but the eyes. He paused, trembling, and a hand, cold as stone. A soldier behind them whispered. Then where did he go? The fog shifted. The tremor returned. And the earth breathed again. Muller, across the battlefield, clutched his rifle. Reiner whispered, "Sir, is this war? Or something else entirely?" Muller didn't blink. "It's the land," he said softly. "It's the dead. The ground never forgets." Clark stared at the mud beneath his boots. For the first time, he wondered, if the dead were trying to warn them, what were they warning about? And why, tonight? The trench felt smaller now, as if the walls had quietly leaned inward during the blackout. Private Clark steadied himself against the wooden support beam, feeling the cold sweat trickle down the back of his neck. The fog still hung thick around the trench, clotting in corners, rolling in slow swirls like breath from something sleeping just beneath the soil. Wilkes kept one hand on Clark's shoulder. "Easy, lad. Breathe. Fog plays tricks on the mind." But Clark shook his head. "No trick makes a hand feel cold as stone. No trick whispers in your ear." Several soldiers huddled together near the dugout entrance, whispering prayers in low voices. A few stared at the ground as though expecting it to open again. The tremors had stopped, but their silence felt louder than any explosion. Lieutenant Harding paced back and forth, lantern raised, jaw clenched tight. "No one is to leave the trench. No patrols. No movement. The fog is too heavy." Clark could tell the lieutenant was frightened too. Fear hung off him, deep in winter. Across no man's land, The German trench was just as shaken. Muller's lantern illuminated the anxious faces of his men. A few had retreated to the dugout, refusing to stand near the trench floor. Rainer whispered, "Sir, the faces we saw, the man sinking, the voices. What if? There are explanations," Muller said firmly, though his voice wavered. Natural gas, collapsing tunnels, deception by sound. But he didn't believe his own words. Rainer pointed to the mud. "Gas doesn't drag men under the earth." Muller said nothing. Back in the brushish trench, Clark forced himself to speak. "Wilkes, what exactly happened to the patrol you mentioned? The one that vanished weeks ago?" Wilkes exhaled long and slow. His breath fogged the air. "Night patrol. 3 men. They crossed no man's land to check a wire break near a crater. Fog rolled in. They didn't come back. When the mist cleared, we checked the area. And," Clark whispered, "no footprints," Wilkes said. "No blood. No signs of struggle. Just gone." Clark's stomach tightened. And the Germans? They reported losing men the same way. Silent disappearances. No gunfire. No shelling. Clark's mouth went dry. "So this isn't new." Wilkes glanced at the ground. "This land has been fought over 4 years. Men die here long before we arrived. Hundreds of thousands. All buried shallow. All restless." Clark swallowed. "You believe in ghosts?" Wilkes shook his head. "I believe in land soaked in so much death that it remembers." The fog rolled again thicker, heavier. It sank into the trench like a slowly filling tide. Clark could barely see Wilkes now, though he stood just a step away. Somewhere distant, a low groan echoed through the earth. Not a tremor this time. Something deeper, like the settling of a massive weight. Clark whispered, "There, you heard that?" Wilkes nodded. "It's shifting again." Suddenly, a loud shout erupted from the far end of the brushish line. "Light! I see a light!" Clark and Wilkes rushed toward the voice, slipping in the mud, grabbing the trench wall for balance. Soldiers gathered near the parapet, pointing across the field. There it was, a small, pale glow hovering just above the ground. Not German. Not brushish. Not lantern-shaped. Clark squinted. "What kind of light is that?" "It's too low," Wilkes murmured. "Too dim." The light moved slowly, gliding, not carried by a hand. It drifted from one crater to another, slipping through fog, as though the mist parted for it. Harding barked, "Hold your fire." No one shoots without command. But no one wanted to shoot. Bullets seemed useless against something that did not walk. Clark leaned forward slightly. His breath froze in his throat. The light paused over the exact spot where the soldier-shaped figure had vanished earlier. It hovered, trembled, then dipped, slowly, softly, and vanished into the earth. Clark whispered. "It went down," Wilkes murmured, "just like the man." Harding's knuckles whitened. "This is hallucination. Fog reflection. Lantern refracted." No one believed him. Clark backed away slowly. "Sir, something under the ground is moving between trenches. That light was a sign." Harding didn't answer. His silence said everything. Across the German lines, Muller's men witnessed the same light. Rainer whispered, "Is that brushish? Signal?" Muller shook his head. "No. Signals don't sync." And for the first time, Muller spoke the words he had tried to deny all night. "Something beneath the ground is not settled." Rainer shuddered. "Sir, you think the dead? We honor the dead." Muller interrupted quickly. "We don't disturb them." "But what if they're disturbed already?" Rainer asked softly. Back in the brushish trench, a soldier screamed suddenly, "Help! It's grabbing me!" Clark and Wilkes spun around. The scream came from the trench's far corner near a collapsed dugout. A young soldier, barely 20, was clawing at the air, kicking wildly, his back against the wall. Clark sprinted toward him, boots splashing. "What's happening?" The soldier gasped, eyes wide with terror. Something pulled my leg." Under the boards. Clark dropped to his knees. The planks were shifting again, rising unevenly. Mud bulged upward beneath them. Wilkes shouted, "Pull him away, now." Clark grabbed the young man's coat and yanked. 2 more soldiers helped, dragging him across the trench floor. As the planks lifted, further, A cold wind rushed upward through the gap. Clark felt it freeze his fingertips. The boards bent. Mud cracked. Fog rushed inward. And then a hand burst through. A mud-covered human hand. Fingers stiff. Frozen. Grey. Clark nearly dropped the soldier. God! Wilkes stepped back in horror. That's human. The hand clawed blindly at the open air. Not reaching for anyone. Not grabbing. Just searching. Searching upward. Searching for escape. Clark shouted. Help me close it. But before anyone could act, the hand sank back beneath the planks as if pulled from below. The board dropped into place. The bulge flattened. Silence. Clark gasped for breath. What did we just see? Wilkes wiped cold sweat off his brow. A body buried in the mud, hit by a shell, pushed upward. No shell hit tonight. Clark whispered. Wilkes froze. Then the tremor returned. Stronger. Louder. Closer than ever before. The entire trench shuddered. Dust fell from the support beams overhead. Rifle barrels rattled against the walls. Men toppled onto each other, clutching the mud for stability. Across the front, German trenches shook too. Muller held onto the edge of the dugout. Reiner, hold steady. Reiner screamed, Sir, look. A ripple moved across the ground. Not along it. Under it. The earth swelled and sank, traveling like a wave made of soil and mud. Clark stared in disbelief. The ground is moving like water. Wilkes gripped his arm. Get to higher planks. Everyone move. Men scrambled onto firing steps and dugout roofs. The wave rolled beneath them, warping boards, knocking supplies from shelves. Muller saw the same from across the field. The wave reached the center of no man's land and stopped. Just like that. Frozen. Waiting. The fog drifted inward slowly, almost purposefully. And then, from the heart of the battlefield, rising through 6 feet of churned soil, a sound echoed. Not a cry, not a whisper, a chorus. Dozens of voices layered together. Leave. Go. Do not. Stay. Clark's blood ran cold. Wilkes whispered, trembling. Those are voices of the fallen. The fog pulsed once. Twice. Then the voices faded, followed by a silence deeper than the trenches had ever known. And Clark realized with dread this wasn't a warning. It was a countdown. The silence that followed the voices was the heaviest the Western Front had ever known. Not the silence of rest, nor the silence after a bombardment. This was the silence of something watching, something waiting, something deep beneath the earth, older than the trenches, older than the war, older than the men who now trembled above it. Private Clark clung to the upper firing step as the last waves of tremor faded. The fog around him curled in slow spirals, as if inhaling the fear of every man in the trench. Wilkes stood beside him, boots sinking in mud, but hands steady on Clark's arm. You heard it, Clark whispered. All of them. All together. Wilkes nodded grimly. Voices don't layer like that unless they come from more than one throat. Clark swallowed. Or more than one death. Down the trench, men huddled in clusters, whispering to each other with wide eyes. Some cried silently. Some crossed themselves. Some looked upward, half expecting the fog to part and reveal something looming above. But nothing came from above. The danger was beneath. Across no man's land, Muller's German unit was just as shaken. The corporal steadied himself on the dugout frame, chest heaving as he looked into the thick darkness between the lines. Reiner approached him carefully, face drained of color. Sir, Reiner whispered, the voices. They weren't German. They weren't British. They were mixed. Muller nodded slowly. Men from both sides die here. Reiner's lips trembled. Do you think they speak together in death? Muller didn't answer that. He only looked down at the ground beneath his boots, back in the British trench. Clark's hands trembled as he wiped the sweat from his forehead. Wilkes, this war, does it make men hear things that aren't there? Wilkes's voice was steady. War makes men see things, yes. Imagine things, yes. But the ground does not move like water. Lanterns do not sink. And voices don't echo through mud. Clark nodded slowly. So you're saying? Wilkes didn't let him finish. I'm saying something in this land is not resting. The trench timber groaned sharply. Every man jumped. The fog pulled thicker, turning the trench into a narrow corridor of ghostly white. Clark squinted, but saw only silhouettes of men shaking. Exhausted, quiet, light. Someone shouted from the far end again. Clark's head jerked upward. Another glow appeared in no man's land, but this was not the same pale drifting orb from earlier. This one flickered like a lantern, shook like a lantern, moved like a lantern. Only, no one held it. It floated inches above the ground, drifting forward until it stopped near a crater hole. The fog wrapped around it, but never touched the flame. Clark felt his breath catch. "That's impossible," he whispered. Wilkes's grip tightened. Look closely." Clark leaned in. Inside the crater where the lantern hovered, the soil rippled like something swimming beneath it. The ripple grew slowly, pushing outward, forming rings in the mud like ripples in a pond. Clark hissed, "It's right under that lantern." And then the lantern vanished straight downward, like a stone swallowed by deep water. Clark jumped back. "How is this happening?" Wilkes didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the mud-filled crater, where the soil still rippled, long after the light disappeared. Lieutenant Harding rushed forward, voice trembling despite his effort to sound authoritative. "What did you men see? Explain." Clark pointed. "A lantern. It sank." Harding barked, "Impossible. Lanterns don't sink into dirt. They fall, they break. He stopped, because the crater began bubbling, soft at first. Then stronger. Mud rose in thick pockets. The air filled with a deep gurgling sound. Men scrambled backward as the bubbles burst one by one, releasing cold air that smelled of rusted metal, wet soil, and something older, like graves disturbed after long sleep. Clark whispered, "Sir, the earth is breathing." A low groan rose beneath their feet. Muller heard the same sound in his trench. "Reiner, the ground, it's coming up again." Reiner backed away, clutching his rifle like a lifeline. "Sir, what is under us?" Muller shook his head. "Not a creature, not an enemy. This is the front. The dead here are countless." Back in the British trench, the mud inside the crater swelled slow, rising like a mound forming from within. Clark's pulse hammered. "Something's pushing up." Wilkes dragged him backward. "Stand clear." The mound grew until it towered knee-high. Then it split. Cracks appeared down the center, releasing a sour, cold vapor. The soil crumbled outward, sliding down the sides like falling sand. Clark stared, breath trapped in his throat. Something was inside. A shape. Humanoid. But UNMOVA. Wilkes muttered. No. The shape's helmet was the first thing visible. A steel Brody helmet, British issue, coated in mud, dented, but unmistakable. Clark's voice shook. A soldier, trapped there. As the dirt slid away, a face appeared. A British soldier's face. Eyeless. Still. Expression frozen between fear and exhaustion. His uniform hung off him. Cloth, soaked in muck. His skin was pale grey, lips slightly open, as if gasping for air that never came. Clark whispered, "He's dead." Wilkes swallowed. "He's been dead 4 days." Harding lifted his lantern closer, shaking. This is one of ours." Clark stepped closer. Mud cracked beneath his boot. He leaned in, trying to identify the man by the faint number on the collar. But then the corpse's mouth moved. Clark stumbled backward, nearly falling. Wilkes gasped, "Did you see?" The mouth twitched again. Not alive, not breathing, just moving. Like something inside the corpse was trying to speak through it. Harding froze. "Don't move closer. Everyone back." Clark's heart pounded so hard he thought it might break his ribs. "He's trying to." The corpse's mouth opened wider. And from deep inside its frozen throat came a sound. Not a voice, not a cry. A single word carried upward by the shifting soil beneath it. "Run." The lantern light flickered violently. Wilkes shouted, "Get back, move." The corpse collapsed inward as the mound beneath it gave way, sucking the body downward with a wet, sickening slurp. Clark grabbed Wilkes's arm as they stumbled back onto the firing step. The mud filled the hole again, fattening perfectly, leaving no trace of what had risen. Harding's voice cracked. This is not natural. This is not the war," another soldier shouted from farther down the trench. "It's happening here too." Clark and Wilkes rushed toward the voice. More planks were rising. More earth swelled. More shapes moved beneath the boards. Clark whispered, cold terror gripping his chest. "Wilkes, the ground isn't just shifting." Wilkes finished the sentence for him. "It's waking." Across the battlefield, Muller came to the same realization. And as the fog thickened, drowning the world in white, the tremor returned long, deep, hungry. Clark stared into the mist. This wasn't the silence of war. Pausing. This was the silence before. Something beneath the Western Front rose for the first time in centuries. And it was rising tonight. The tremor grew longer, deeper, almost rhythmic, like something beneath the trench had finally stretched after sleeping for centuries. Private Clark clung to the firing step as the ground pulsed again, not shaking, pulsing, as if the earth itself had a heartbeat. Fog rolled in heavier than before, sinking into the trench until Clark could barely see Wilkes standing half a step away. The world felt smaller, tighter, suffocating. Even sound seemed swallowed by the mist. Then came the smell, faint at first, wet soil mixed with rust, followed by something older, the scent of disturbed graves. Clark's stomach tightened. "Wilkes, that smell." Wilkes nodded slowly. "It's coming from below." Down the trench, men backed against the walls, rifles shaking in their hands. But they didn't point them anywhere. "Who do you shoot when the enemy is the ground?" Lieutenant Harding raised his lantern again, the flame flickering wildly. "Everyone stay calm. No one fires without orders." But his voice cracked, revealing the fear he could no longer hide. Across no man's land, Muller tried to steady his own soldiers. "Hold your ground, eyes sharp," he shouted. Though the tremor beneath his boots made his knees weak, Reiner whispered, "Sir, the fog, it's sinking." Muller looked around. Reiner was right. The fog wasn't rising from the area. It was descending from above. Falling like silent white rain. Clark felt it too. The mist pressed downward, settling onto their helmets and coats like ash from a burning world. And with it came a low drone, a vibration in the air. Not Earth this time, the air itself. HUMMED. Clark grabbed Wilkes' sleeve. "Do you hear that? Like singing." Wilkes listened carefully. His eyes widened. "That's not singing. It's the voices again. But muffled." Clark strained his ears. The drone wasn't random. It had a rhythm, a cadence, a shape, words, hidden inside the hum. "Leave go. Night. Rising." Clark felt the hair on his arms stand. The voices weren't warning anymore. They were chanting. Suddenly, a deafening crack shattered the air. A wooden support beam snapped clean in half just a few yards away. Dirt rained down from the trench ceiling. Soldiers dove aside as the wall buckled slightly. Harding shouted, "Watch the ceiling. It's coming down." Clark steadied himself. "The ground's pushing upward. It's forcing the trench walls apart." Wilkes nodded grimly. "Something huge is moving under us." Another crack thundered through the trench as a second beam split. The ground heaved upward, sending a wave through the floor. Clark grabbed the edge. Wilkes, look. The planks in front of them began to bow upward again. The same slow bulge that had taken the corpse. The same swelling that had swallowed the lantern. But this time it didn't stop. The bulge grew larger, rising until it reached Clark's knees. Harding's lantern swung wildly. Men, fall back. They scrambled backward, tripping over discarded gear, slipping in mud, bumping into one another as the bulge grew higher. Higher than it split down the middle. A long, clean crack opened in the mud. Cold air rushed. Upward. Fog spiraled into the crack like drained water. And, inside the opening, Clark saw shapes. Bodies. Dozens of them, packed tightly in the soil, a mass grave unearthed by hunger itself. Some were German, some were British, some wore uniforms too old for this war. French, Belgian, even Prussian from long-forgotten battles fought on the same cursed ground. Clark whispered, "Wilkes, these men, they're centuries apart. Wilkes nodded, horrified. This battlefield's been war-torn long before us. Within the soil-packed cavity, the bodies were not lying flat. They were tilted, facing upward, their heads angled toward the cracked dot, as if listening. As if waiting to rise. Clark felt his throat tighten. No, this isn't right. One corpse shifted slightly as the soil loosened. Its jaw parted gently, spilling dirt. Its hollow eyes seemed to follow the tremors above. Wilkes whispered shakily. The dead are being pushed toward the surface. And then a hand shot upward, not crawling, not grabbing. Reaching. Clark stumbled back into Harding. It moved. Sir, it moved. The hand strained upward, fingers splayed wide. More mud cracked open as a second hand rose beside it. Stiff, frozen, but reaching. Harding shouted, "Back! Move back now!" Men scrambled farther down the trench. Clark and Wilkes followed, boots slipping in the slick mud, as more hands emerged from the widening crack. 5, 6, 10, each pale, stiff, and silent. Across no man's land, Muller saw the same cracks ripping open in his trench. Reiner screamed, "Sir, the wall is full of bodies." The trench wall bulged outward, corpses pressed against it from behind the soil, their faces imprinting faintly against the mud, eyes, noses, and mouths forming grotesque silhouettes in the dirt. Muller shouted, "Fall back. All men fall back." But the Germans had nowhere to run. Their dugouts were shallower, their trench narrower. The walls strained dangerously as the soil beneath surged upward. Back in the brushish line, Clark felt the tremors coming faster now. Quicker, harder. Like footsteps, huge footsteps. Wilkes shouted over the growing rumble. "It's heading toward the center line." Clark's heart froze. "Sir, if whatever's under us rises completely, both trenches collapse." Harding nodded grimly. "We need to get to the supply trench. Move." They stumbled back through the trench, stepping over fallen helmets and rifles, climbing over collapsed planks. The fog glowed. Faintly behind them, the cracks widening, the corpses rising, the earth splitting further. Then everything stopped. The tremor froze mid-wave. The fog halted. Mid-swell. The cracked earth paused. Mid-rise. Clark didn't dare breathe. Wilkes whispered. Why did it stop? Clark's ears rang in the sudden silence. Then he felt it, a shift. Not from below. Not from above. From behind him. Slow. Heavy. Dragging. Something was moving in the trench they had just run through. Wilkes turned first. And froze. Clark followed his gaze and saw a silhouette standing in the mist. Tall. Human. Shape. Motionless. Its shoulders bent unnaturally, one arm hanging too low, the head tilted as if broken by a fall. Clark whispered, "Wilkes, is that a soldier?" The silhouette didn't answer. Fog drifted past its face, revealing a pair of dark, empty sockets, the same eyeless face they had seen rise from the earth. But this one was standing. Not buried. Not sinking, standing upright. Wilkes grabbed Clark's arm. "Run, now." Clark didn't move. The silhouette raised one arm slowly and pointed directly at the men. Then its jaw cracked open, and a voice spoke, but not its voice. Hundreds of voices layered behind it, the same chant from the earth. "Leave, leave, leave." Then louder, "Leave." The ground exploded with tremors. Clark grabbed Wilkes. The earth roared, and everything beneath them began to rise. The rising began with a sound no man on the Western Front had ever heard. Not the scream of artillery. Not the metallic snapping of shrapnel. Not the whistle of incoming shells. It was deeper. Older. A long, dragging groan that vibrated through the planks, through the rifles, through the bones of every soldier who heard it. Private Clark felt his ribs tremble as the trench floor shuddered beneath him. Wilkes grabbed his sleeve, eyes wide with terror. "Clark, move." But Clark couldn't move, not at first. His ears were filled with the layered voice still echoing across the trench walls. "Leave, leave, leave." The silhouette stood motionless in the fog behind them, its arms still raised, pointing. Its jaw hung slightly open, the black void of its mouth pulsing with each unearthly chant. Then suddenly it dropped its arm, and the fog collapsed inward as if sucked into the earth. Wilkes shoved Clark hard. Go. Clark stumbled forward, caught himself against the splintered wooden wall, and sprinted after the others as the trench behind them buckled with a deafening crack. The ground split open along the center of the trench floor. A fissure tore through the mud, long and jagged, racing toward Clark like a living vein. He leapt over a fallen rifle as the crack widened behind him. Faster, Wilkes shouted, pushing to men ahead. Lieutenant Harding led the retreat, lantern swinging wildly, to the communication trench. Move, but the path was narrowing. Walls crumbled, timber support snapped, and fell like brittle bones. Soil poured into the trench from above as the ground beneath lifted in massive, heaving waves. Across no man's land. Muller's German unit saw the same nightmare unfolding. The earth under their trench surged upward, then split open, revealing rows of pale hands, clawing blindly from the shifting soil. Reiner screamed, "Sir, they're coming up, all of them." Muller grabbed him by the collar. "Don't look back, run." But the dead were not rising to chase. They were being pushed upward, forced out of the earth like roots torn free by a storm. Back in the British trench, Clark slipped as the ground beneath him heaved again. He grabbed a sandbag, pulling himself upward just as a corpse, grey and mud-covered, slid out of the bursting soil inches from his boots. Its mouth twitched. Its eyes, empty circles, seemed to turn toward him. Clark gasped and scrambled away, Wilkes hauling him upright. "Don't stop. Keep going." They squeezed through a narrow bend in the trench as the earth behind them erupted once more, spraying mud and debris into the air. "This way," Harding yelled, pointing to a partially intact duckboard path. But as Clark turned the corner, he saw something that froze him to the core. The trench floor ahead was rising. Slowly. Steadily. Like something huge was pushing upward from below a great body, beneath a thin layer of earth. Wilkes swore under his breath. "We can't cross that. It'll burst under us." Harding looked left, right. The dugouts were collapsing, the trench walls caving in. Their options were disappearing. To the parapet, he shouted, "CLIMB out." Soldiers exchanged horrified glances. No man's land was a death sentence. Open fire. Machine guns, snipers, mines. But tonight, there were no guns firing. No flares. No patrols. The battlefield was empty. Watching. Waiting. Clark grabbed a foothold in the muddy wall. Wilkes boosted him from below as he scrambled over the parapet, boots slipping. He clawed at roots and broken posts until he pulled himself onto the shattered ground above the trench. When he looked around, his breath caught. The entire western front from British line to German line was moving. The ground rippled like a giant sheet being shaken by invisible hands. Craters swelled and sank. Dirt flowed in sick, undulating waves. It was as if the land itself was alive. Wilkes hauled himself up beside Clark, chest heaving. "By God!" Harding and 5 more soldiers climbed up moments later. One collapsed on his knees, staring in disbelief at the battlefield as the fog folded itself downward into the cracks, like sinking cloth. Then they heard it from the German side. Screams. Clark whipped his head around. Muller's men had also climbed out. Some stood frozen, some ran, some dragged wounded comrades through the mud. But all of them looked at the same thing, a massive section of the earth, rising in the center of no man's land. Not a person, not a body, not any shape they could recognize, just soil lifting as if an enormous mound was growing upward from beneath. Clark whispered, "Wilkes, what is that?" Wilkes shook his head. "Something deep, something old." Muller's voice echoed faintly across the battlefield. British soldiers." Harding cupped his hands. What do you want?" Muller pointed wildly at the rising mound. "Look, the center. Clark did. The mound cracked down the middle, releasing a blast of icy air that rolled across the ground like a shockwave. Clark staggered backward as the freezing gust swept over him, burning his lungs with cold. Then he heard it, a voice. Not from above. Not from the trenches. Not from the living. Deep. Layered. Echoing from the heart of the mound. Double quotes go. Clark stumbled. It's warning us. Wilkes grabbed his shoulder. The whole battlefield, every dead man buried here, they're telling us to leave. The mound split further along, gaping rupture stretching hundreds of feet across no man's land. Fog and cold air poured upward, carrying the unmistakable smell of old death. Muller shouted, "Back, all men back." Clark looked to the British trench. It was collapsing inward, completely destroyed, swallowed by the rising earth. Harding cried, "There's nowhere to go." But the voices rose again louder. Desperate, AGO. Go, go. The mound surged higher. Clark fell to his knees. Wilkes, if this keeps rising, the whole front will. Wilkes looked out across the battlefield with grim certainty. It's not rising to crush us. Clark stared. Then what? Wilkes's voice trembled. It's rising to release what's under it. The ground cracked one last time, a deep, thunderous rupture that echoed across miles. The fog recoiled upward, the soil buckled, and the air filled with the deafening sound of thousands of voices, screaming one word in unison: asterisk, asterisk, run. Asterisk, asterisk. The ground collapsed beneath Clark's feet. Private Clark didn't feel the moment his feet lost the ground, only the sudden drop, a breathless plummet into darkness, and the cold rush of air roaring past his ears. For a heartbeat he thought he was dying. For another heartbeat, he wondered if he already had. Then dash impact. His body slammed into soft, wet soil. For a few seconds he couldn't breathe. Mud pressed into his palms and seeped under his nails as he clawed upward, coughing violently. A dim glow filtered through cracks in the broken ground above, the faint moonlight of no man's land peeking through torn earth. Clark, a voice hissed behind him. Wilkes. Clark rolled over, gasping. Wilkes crawled through the darkness toward him, mud smeared across his face. "You alive?" he whispered. Clark nodded breathlessly. I think so." Above them, the earth groaned, the same ancient creaking sound that had haunted the trenches all night. Dust rained from the ruptured ceiling, and the distant echo of shifting soil rumbled, like thunder trapped underground. More shapes fell through the widening crack. Lieutenant Harding, to soldiers from 2nd Platoon. All landing in the dark, coughing and scrambling upright. "Form up," Harding rasped. "Is everyone unhurt?" But the question died on his lips as someone lit a match. The tiny flame flickered, and in that faint glow, they saw where they were, a tunnel, but not one made by British SAPPERS. Not German mining. Tunnels. Not modern at all. These walls were old. Far older than any war on the Western Front. Roots hung like skeletal fingers from a curved ceiling of packed clay. The walls glistened as if sweating cold water. Long cracks ran in every direction, carved by the shifting earth. Clark whispered, "This tunnel, it's ancient." Wilkes ran a hand along the wall. Hundreds of years old, maybe thousands. Harding looked upward at the hole they had fallen through. The ground trembled faintly again. The crack widened another inch. "We need to move," he said. "The entire front is collapsing." A faint voice drifted from behind them. "Help." Clark froze. Wilkes gripped his sleeve. "Sir," Wilkes whispered. "There are voices down here." Harding turned sharply. "Light. Someone bring the lantern." A soldier struck another match, then another. And slowly, the deeper darkness ahead of them shifted. Shapes emerged. Bodies. Dozens of them, buried upright in the walls. Their faces protruded from the clay, eyes closed, mouths half open, mud packed into their uniforms. Some wore British insignia, some German, some uniforms so old their colors had faded into nothing, all trapped, all pressed into the walls, like fossils. Clark staggered backward. "There, standing," Wilkes murmured. "They were buried by cave-ins, maybe during old battles, long before ours." Harding swallowed hard. "They died underground." One of the buried figures moved, a faint twitch of its head, a gentle opening of its jaw. Then, in a breath that seemed to come from beneath centuries of soil, it whispered, "Go." Clark fell back in horror. "Sir, it's alive. It's..." Wilkes grabbed him. "No, not alive. Never alive. But something's moving them." A deeper tremor rolled through the tunnel. Dust rained down, The ancient walls cracked further. Harding barked, "Move!" Now they ran. Boots splashing through ankle-deep mud, match flames trembling wildly. Every step echoed like footsteps. Through a tomb, more voices rose from the walls. "Goat leave, the earth, rising, run." Muller's voice suddenly echoed from somewhere ahead, shouting in German. Harding raised his lantern. "Muller, is that you?" "Hello, hello, over here," Muller cried. They sprinted toward the voice. Up ahead stood Muller, Rainer, and 3 German soldiers, all mud-soaked, terrified, but alive. Muller's eyes widened with relief. "You British fell too. We're all trapped," Harding said. "What's happening up there?" Muller shook his head, breath trembling. The earth ruptured. "The dead, the ones buried in the walls. They move." Rainer pointed deeper into the tunnel. "And whatever is beneath us, it is coming up." A long, thunderous groan rattled the tunnel. Clay split. Roots snapped. The walls bulged outward. Clark shouted, "This way," and ran down a narrower offshoot of the tunnel. They followed him. This passage was steeper, the ground sloping downward in a sharp angle. Air grew colder, the tremors louder. The chanting returned, not human anymore, not layered voices, but the low, deep sound of the earth dragging breath through its lungs. "Run, run, run." Light burst ahead, not sunlight, not lantern fire, but a pale blue glow leaking through the cracks of the tunnel wall. Clark slowed. "What is that?" Wilkes whispered. "Not gas. Not light, something else." The ground buckled violently, the ceiling split. A chunk of earth plummeted into the tunnel behind them, sealing the way back. "Go!" Harding screamed, "Run for the light." They sprinted. The blue glow grew brighter. The tunnel widened. Air grew colder still. Then they burst into an enormous cavern, hidden beneath the western front. Clark stopped dead. They all did. The cavern stretched farther than they could see, lit by thousands of faint blue luminescent fungi spreading across the walls, like stars in a buried sky. Pools of still water reflected the glow, turning the darkness into a ghostly blue twilight. In the center of the cavern lay a pit, a massive sinkhole, perfectly round, breathing cold air. Muller whispered, "This is beneath both trenches." Rainer pointed, voice shaking. "And something down there is rising." The pit rumbled, a deep, seismic pulse that shook the cavern floor. The blue water rippled outward, cracks spidered across the stone. Wilkes staggered. "If this ruptures, the entire front collapses." Both sides. Harding nodded grimly. "This isn't a battlefield anymore. It's a grave waking up." The walls shook harder now. The chanting from the earth became deafening. The cavern ceiling cracked open, letting streams of mud rain down. Then, from the pit, a massive gust of air erupted upward, throwing everyone to their knees. And in that wind came a final whispered roar. "Go." Clark grabbed Wilkes. "We have to get out. Now." They fled toward a narrow tunnel at the far end of the cavern. Muller's men closed behind. The cavern collapsed behind them in a thunderous roar, filling the air with blue-lit dust. The tunnel rose sharply higher, until they burst through the surface. Clark fell face first into cold night air. They were outside the trenches, far from no man's land, on a wooded ridge overlooking the entire western front. Behind them, explosions of soil erupted, where the trenches once were. Not bombs. The earth itself. Rising. Collapsing. Releasing everything buried beneath. Wilkes whispered, shaking. "The dead saved us," Muller nodded. "They warned us." Harding stared hollowly at the battlefield below. "They wanted us gone before it rose." Clark watched as the fog swallowed the collapsing trenches, the battlefield reshaping itself like a wounded animal shifting in its sleep. For the first time since the war began, the Western Front fell silent, truly silent. No guns. No voices. No footsteps. Only the quiet breath of earth settling back into its ancient grave. Wilkes placed a hand on Clark's shoulder. "Not a soul will believe this." Clark nodded softly. "But we'll remember. Because the land remembers us." The fog thinned, the stars reappeared, and the Western Front, exhausted from its night of awakening, finally slept again.